And good evening to everyone. And I'm sorry I'm not there with you in person. I'm based in the UK and it's in the middle of our semester, so I have teaching and I could not be there with you personally. I would really like to thank Concern Worldwide South Korea for inviting me to this session. I think we've heard great introduction from the executive director and also from the ambassadors uh, in terms of the role of the GHI to raise awareness and really point out in terms of where the problem areas are, what are the success stories, and so on. So the GHI 2024, of course, is a reminder that hunger persists in our world today, as we've just heard, and that there's been little improvement since 2016. And also that this is a result of multiple overlapping challenges, from conflicts to climate change, market disruptions, economic downturns, and so on. And the right to food, I think, which is a very important human right, especially the right to healthy food, is largely unrealized due to differences in affordability, accessibility, availability with women and children, especially those living in rural areas, in low-income countries, belonging to indigenous or lower caste groups or minority groups, the worst affected. The burden of hunger, of food and nutrition security, and of climate change is not equally distributed. And I think this is the reason that this year the Global Hunger Index, which includes a thematic paper every year, decided to focus on gender justice. And I'm very happy to have been one of the lead co-authors for this paper. So I think why the focus on gender justice? We've already heard a little bit in terms of women being crucial to food systems. They make up nearly 40% of agri-food workers. But of course, we all know that they do face multiple constraints to resources, to credit. And global estimates have shown that if you close the gender gap or the labor and productivity gaps in terms of gender in agriculture sector between women and men, this could actually increase the global GDP by 1% and lift many, many people, 45 million is the estimate, out of food insecurity. We have a lot of evidence. So FAO's recent report in 2024 called The Unjust Climate highlights the differential effects of climate change on the poor and non-poor, but also on male and female-headed households. They note that women's rising work burdens alongside time poverty is a major reason for poor child nutrition outcomes, alongside women's own health. And this has also been my own research in South Asia, working with indigenous communities in India, that time poverty is a very crucial mediating factor, women's time poverty, between access to food and good, zero hunger or food security and nutrition outcomes. So deepening poverty and food insecurity is expected also to triple the prevalence of gender-based violence, especially intimate partner violence in sub-Saharan Africa, as a recent report from the UN Population Fund has just released also demonstrates. So we don't really have time. We have to act now, and we have to ensure gender justice, that is basically equity between people in all spheres of life, which I believe is critical to a just world and to achieving climate and food justice. It holds the key, I think, to unlocking transformative action and change. Now, this is a graph figure which is there in the gender hunger, in this year's GHI report, which clearly shows the intersections between gender inequality. As you move towards the right and to the upper right quadrant, you have higher levels of gender inequality. This is taken from the UNDP's Gender Inequality Index. You also have in the top right quadrant higher risk to climate change and also higher levels of food and nutrition insecurity. So I think these three factors seem to come together in terms of increasing the stress on countries, on households, and communities. I think Bangladesh was just mentioned as a country which has made remarkable progress over the last couple of years. It is deeply affected by climate change. It is a very poor country, but actually it has prioritized gender equality. It has prioritized food and nutrition security, and you see the results. So I think if we address this triple burden, starting with gender inequality, we can make progress. So One thing, as we have heard already, is there are these larger structural issues, including market concentration and disruptions, high food prices, armed conflict, and so on. But women and girls are typically hardest hit by these insecurities, including by climate extremes, because of the gender divisions of labor, their roles and responsibilities in the household for producing food, for putting food on the table. And at the same time, their lack of access to resources and opportunities. And this is driven by gender discriminatory norms and also gender-based violence, which I just mentioned, which place women and also sexual and gender minorities at heightened risk of food insecurity and also suffering due to climate change impacts. And this can be in many different ways. To give a few examples, of course, during pregnancy, and lactation, women have needs, special needs for foods, and this may not always be accessible to them. There are various tasks like during climate change, flooding, we hear reports that, access to healthcare services, access to childcare services, access to clinics, these are all disrupted, and these may also affect women worse because of their specific needs. Women, I think in today's time, we know globally that with climate change, particularly like in South Asia, I come from India, that a lot of men are actually moving to urban areas, to other occupations, to non-farm based livelihoods because of climate variability and the risk to agricultural livelihoods. So women then remain on the land and remain on the farms. And this means that, not just is their remuneration for their work insecure increasingly, but they also have to bear the burden of unpaid care, of care work, of looking after the household, of the children, single-handed while their husbands are away. They lack access to services, technology, finance, and they have weak tenure rights as well. So all these factors really contribute to enhancing the effect on women. So I briefly wanted to set out the framework of gender justice, which we use in this report. What we argue is that these three, gender justice, climate justice, and food justice, are interlinked, and that gender justice is actually the key to unlock the justices in the food and climate domain as well. So there are three interconnected dimensions of gender justice: recognition, redistribution, and representation. So recognition is really that the first step is to recognize that people have different needs, different vulnerabilities, and there are multiple reasons for their vulnerabilities across regions, groups, ethnicities, etc., what we call as intersectional injustices, that some women and even some men may be more marginalized than others. So recognizing this is the first step in terms of transforming the gender discriminatory norms in order to change how these gender roles and capacities are viewed, how they are supported, how they are enabled. The second dimension is redistributional justice, which is really redistributing resources and opportunities, both public resources as well as private resources, to redress deeply entrenched gender inequalities. And these include, of course, recognizing that gender injustices exist, but you have productive resources, social protection, land, employment, credit, education, skills, knowledge, and so on. And the third very important dimension is what we call as representation or representational justice. And this really refers to closing the gender gap in women's participation in politics and decision making at multiple levels, at the household, community, also at the state and policy making levels. So legal changes and women's political participation and leadership may help push policies towards gender equity, though such outcomes are not assured and can take time. South Korea is a very good example that since the 1980s and the 90s, there has been a lot of progress across different dimensions of gender equality. However, political representation still lags behind. And as per the global gender gap report of 2024 that despite all other improvements, because of low representation in politics, South Korea ranks at 94 out of 146 countries, and it is only a little ahead of a poor country like Bangladesh, which ranks 99. So to advance the agenda of gender, climate, and food justice, we therefore need action across all justice domains and at various scales. I already mentioned, and I think this is very central in the thematic paper in this year's report, that recognizing intersectionality, that you have multiple compounded oppression. So it's not that all women and all men are the same or are equally disadvantaged. So in India, where I come from, for instance, caste is a major factor framing discrimination. Landless households often belong to the lower castes, and they face multiple forms of discrimination and injustice. Similarly, you have migrant workers in many contexts. You have indigenous communities. You have people living in remote rural areas. And we really need to recognize what are the specific burdens they face and how do we address them. So I think what the pathway that we suggest in terms of achieving gender justice is really requires change at different scales and at different levels. So right from the horizontal axis is from the individual level to the systemic level, you need change. And also you need change at the bottom is the informal to the formal level, because many of the discriminatory norms which I mentioned are also informal arrangements at different levels, or informal social expectations of what men and women should contribute, should do. So therefore, we need reforms, therefore, at all levels across these systems. So redistribution, of course, of power and resources is needed at the household level, at other levels. As I already said, you need at the most systemic level representation in order to ensure that whatever legal changes are made, policy changes are made, are also implemented. So to sum up, the Global Hunger Index clearly shows that there has been progress, but the progress is falling short. And this is slowed down to a troubling degree due to all these other reasons like conflict, intensifying effects of climate change, overlapping crises, and so on. And the world's poorest countries, of course, in sub-Saharan Africa and some in South Asia, are the worst affected. I think this is also showing that we are not really giving enough regard to the human right to adequate food. So I think the right to food is something that has been bypassed and we need to put center stage. So to protect the progress that has been made, we do need urgent action. It has to be urgent, it has to be decisive and coherent to address these compounding disadvantages. And we do feel the argument that we have made is that promoting gender justice is a cornerstone to enable equitable, nutritious, and resilient food systems and ensure the right to food for all. So apart from strengthening accountability and enforceability of the right to adequate food, it is very important to promote gender transformative approaches to food and climate policies by implementing these 3 R's, the recognition, redistribution, and representation, and make investments that integrate and promote gender, climate, and food justice. Bangladesh is a very good example, or Nepal that was noted, where public investments in care, education, health, and rural development have worked together to both strengthen gender justice, but also address issues of climate resilience and zero hunger by reducing the discriminatory norms and promoting equitable distribution to resources and services across all households and communities. So thank you very much for your time and for listening.